topic. First of all, I want to say Happy World Environment Day, which we have corrected just few days for last 2 months, and probably we will keep it up. So coming to my topic is a cyanotic newborn management itineraries for pediatrician. So fact file is fetal diagnosis is available in less than 3% of cases. More than 90% will not have a nearby tertiary care center. Insurance and there will be out of pocket payment. More than 70% will have economic constraints. 5 to 10% chance of having two procedures in first 6 months. 25 to 50% will have comorbidity, and if not treated on time, the 80 to 90% mortality may be there. If detected on time, more than 60% will have good quality and the quantity of life, but 100% will need a medical care lifelong. So this is the most important part, that they all will need a medical care for lifelong. So that is why this is not a single point management for the pediatrician. As Lao Ju said, that the journey of 1,000 miles begins with one step. So here the role of pediatrician, first step starts with diagnosis, referral, and then subsequently the growth, nutrition, vaccination, non-cardiac issue, mental issue. And for a cardiac care person, is a diagnosis, intervention. If needed, then again diagnosis, intervention. So definitely the most of the time patient is interacting with a pediatrician. If we look at the total incidence of cyanotic heart disease, this is actually 20% of whole group of the congenital heart disease, and the congenital heart diseases are classified as acyanotic heart disease or cyanotic heart disease. As you know, acyanotic heart disease will have normal saturation to begin with. Later, there might be complication and desaturation, but cyanotic heart disease more or less always starts with low saturation. And they are complex lesion. You cannot expect a child to grow a cyanotic heart disease. Multiple surgeries, a single surgery sometimes, but most of the time multiple surgeries may be needed, and presentation of a child will be either with cyanotic spell in those patients who are having less blood flowing to their lungs, and cyanosis with CHF in those children where lung flow is adequate, still there is cyanosis. So this is the cyanotic heart disease, and by definition, when an anatomical cardiac defect is such that systemic venous blood, which has SpO2 60 to 70%, enters directly into a systemic circulation instead of reaching lungs, and therefore aortic saturation fall less than 95%. Presentation of baby will depend on the type of congenital heart defect, presence or absence of duct, PFO and other shunt lesion, as well as hemoglobin and hematocrit. Presence of fetal hemoglobin in first few days actually may be helpful. So let's see how it is. So first breath of a baby is a testing time for the integrity of the cardiopulmonary unit. So what is the integrity of a heart, cardiovascular system? So the all desaturated blood should reach to right atrium to morphological, specially designed morphological right ventricle, which is a pump, and then it should reach to pulmonary artery, and then lungs come back to left atrium, then again the specially designed morphologically left ventricle, from where it will go to whole body. So this is the heart structure. You can see that. And then what is the competency of cardiopulmonary unit? To transit into adult circulation. So here you can see the picture. The left side is shown in red and right side is shown in blue. So there is a definite differentiation of the color of blood, showing the saturation of blood is distinctly different in two sides. So on the left side, SpO2 is more than 90%. PCO2 is less than 40%. Aortic systolic pressure for a baby is 70 to 90 mmHg. Aortic diastolic pressure more than 50. And here on the right side, the mixed venous saturation is around 70%. RV-PA systolic pressure remain only 20 to 25. This is 1/5 of what is expected on this systemic side. But what happens before the birth? So this is a picture showing fetal circulation. What does it show? It shows that maximum SpO2 in fetal left ventricle is only 65%. The maximum saturated blood is in umbilical vein. The saturation drops down to 70% at IVC level and 65% at right atrial level. The maximum saturation, so inside the heart is 65%, and you can see that that is through PFO. This blood of the blood of ductus venosus is redirected into PFO and directly entering into left atrium and left ventricle, and then going into upper part of body. And then second important thing is pressure in right ventricle and left ventricle are almost same, rather RV dominant, so that blood can flow right to left. And there is ductus, there also blood is directly entering from the pulmonary artery to aorta. So this is what is the fetal circulation. So when we go for neonatal, we know that 65% is the maximum saturation for a fetus, but when we go in the neonatal resuscitation room, then what are our targets? First 1 minute is a very golden hour where we have to look for the airway patency, breathing on, if we need to start ventilation, circulation, we have to establish, and drugs to be given. And our targets are heart rate has to be more than 100, normal temperature and peripheral pulses should be there, and within 4 minutes this saturation should go above 80. Within 10 minutes, it should be 85 to 95. If this SpO2 is not achieved, then we have to look for other region. One is the airway issue, which include choanal atresia and this other laryngomalacia etc. And the second group is lungs diseases, which also include the congenital diaphragmatic hernia. If both are not there, then what are our diagnosis? What are our probable diagnosis? So it may be primary pulmonary hypertension, it may be abnormal hemoglobin, which is a very rare thing to have a methemoglobinemia just at birth. And then third, I am keeping cyanotic congenital heart disease. So what is the primary pulmonary hypertension? We have seen what is the fetal circulation and what is the adult circulation. So the fetal circulation does not convert into adult circulation. Ductus remain open beyond 24 to 72 hours. SpO2 achieved is less than 85% in 10 minutes, and subsequently it remains low if right upper and lower limb SpO2 difference more than 3%. In absence of any other structural cardiac anomaly, PPHN remains the real contender for the cyanotic congenital heart disease. McNamara in JCC 1983 wrote, the period of 1946 to 1982 saw a revolution in pediatric cardiac care due to evolution of the method to keep open PFO and PDA. So why PD and PFO are important for palliation of cyanotic congenital heart disease. Ductus arteriosus is essential fetal structure, but in postnatal life it is expected to close. But in a serious critical congenital heart disease, we try to palliate it by keep it opening by drugs or maybe other methods. And in condition like pulmonary atresia, hypoplastic left heart syndrome, and transposition of great artery, ductal patency can be achieved by prostaglandin infusion. Stenting can be done, and balloon atrial septostomy is done to optimize the interatrial connection at the level of atrium. So oxygen dissociation curve is another very important thing in causing hypoxia to a baby. So a normal hemoglobin has a ferrous iron and alpha-2 beta-2 chain, and it has less affinity to oxygen than a fetal hemoglobin. Fetal hemoglobin has a ferrous form of iron, and instead of beta-2 chain, it has gamma-2, but this actually causes the shifting of the oxygen dissociation curve towards the left. But despite the strong oxygen affinity at the tissue level, oxygen release is adequate once in case of fetal hemoglobin. But if it is a methemoglobinemia, affinity is very strong. This oxygen dissociation curve is shifted towards the left, but the release of oxygen at the tissue level is very low. So that is the cause of cyanosis despite of having enough PO2. Then another thing is about the hemoglobin and hematocrit. So visibility of cyanosis is very important to make a diagnosis. But what happens if hemoglobin and hematocrit are not adequate? Here you can see the 20 gram of hemoglobin will cause visibility of cyanosis at 88% of situation. But if this hemoglobin falls by 10 gram, then you have visible cyanosis only above below when saturation drops below the 80%, 75% approximately, and same is the hematocrit. 60% hematocrit visibility of cyanosis will come above in around 80-85%. But this hematocrit, if it is 40%, then visibility of cyanosis will come quite late, around 65-70%. So hemoglobin and hematocrit are very important to give a visibility to cyanosis, and this is why we need to use pulse oximeter and not guess on the should not believe on our eyes because of this particular thing. And neonatal screening with the pulse oximeter is established norm. Recommendation by American Academy of Pediatrics are that it should be done after 24 hours with appropriate neonatal probe, must be done in right upper and right lower limb. Proper waveform must be there and limbs must be warm. So that is very, very important. A normal screening age, if SpO2 is more than 95% and there is no step down, more or if it is there less than 3%, and this screening is failed test if SpO2 is less than 90% or right upper limb and right lower limb step down is more than 3%. But what happens when SpO2 is between 90 to 95%? We have to repeat many times, and our clinical suspicion, if it is high, then we should go for further investigation and echo we can call for. Then cyanotic CSD, what are the type of cyanotic CSD? So one group, as I mentioned before, is decreased pulmonary blood flow. This is called TOF physiology. There you get a single S2 ESM, it may be present or absent, and no congestive heart failure. Pulmonary bay you get. You don't get a prominent pulmonary segment, small heart size, decreased pulmonary blood flow, oligemic lung field, and essentially there should be pulmonary stenosis or pulmonary atresia. This particular group may be drug dependent, particularly if pulmonary valve is not properly formed and there is a pulmonary atresia. Then second group is increased pulmonary blood flow, S2 single or wide fixed, and congestive heart failure present. One group under this category is transposition physiology, where you get cardiomegaly, increased pulmonary blood flow, and still, despite of increased pulmonary blood flow, you get a very low SpO2, and essentially there should not be pulmonary stenosis or atresia. For the admixture lesion, the cardiomegaly, increased pulmonary blood flow, but the SpO2 is around 90%, and essentially there should not be PS, pulmonary stenosis or pulmonary atresia. Another way of looking at the cyanotic heart disease is 5T. 5T is tetralogy of fallow transposition of great arteries, total anomalous of pulmonary venous drainage, truncus arteriosus, and tricuspid atresia. So the many contender for this group are double outlet right ventricle abstain, anomaly of tricuspid valve, corrected transposition VSTPS, single ventricle, and the heterotaxy with the complex congenital heart disease. It can be these cyanotic heart disease may be drug dependent. A systemic circulation is drug dependent when coarctation of aorta, critical aortic stenosis, hypoplastic left heart syndrome is there. Drug dependency. Pulmonary circulation may be depending on duct in pulmonary atresia, critical pulmonary stenosis, tricuspid atresia, TOF. Then duct dependence for mixing and to improve oxygen content is in the transposition of great arteries, where you have a two parallel circulation. So clinically it is difficult to find out a proper diagnosis, particularly because in neonate heart rate is very high. Then it's better to go for the SpO2 and metabolic acidosis. There is this chart I have shown, like if single S2 is there, no murmur, low SpO2, then you think of TGA. But if it is there is a continuous murmur somewhere, then you think about pulmonary atresia. Then if pansystolic murmur is there in cyanotic, maybe tricuspid atresia remains the diagnosis. But in a case where wide and fixed split, if you can decipher, then ASD-like finding, then you should think about total anomalous pulmonary venous connection. But if the S2 is wide and is not wide and fixed, P2 is very loud, then you should think of obstructive TAPVC. A person who is having circulatory low cardiac output, single S2, and the saturation around say 90%, hypoplastic left heart syndrome may be there, and to and fro murmur in cases of TOF with absent pulmonary valve. And besides that, ECG is also a very important indicator of abnormality inside the heart, but not appropriately it can diagnose. So the important findings are like the pure R wave, and these like fragmented QRS like in the Epstein anomaly, and superior axis like in this case you can see AVF is negative and the one is equiphagic. So in that case superior axis is there, or the T wave is persisting beyond the 72 hours. Then coming to hyperoxia test, it is based on the theory that if there is an absence of persistent cardiac shunt, then administration of 100% oxygen will increase PaO2. So 100% FiO2 for 10 minutes given. If it is more than 200, then cardiac disease is unlikely. If it is less than 50, then transposition physiology is possible. In 50 to 150, the other mixing lesions can be expected. It may be false positive in the primary pulmonary hypertension. Now, X-ray test is very important, as I shown before that cyanotic CST is being classified based on the X-ray test. So pulmonary blood flow, and that is very well can be seen in X-ray test. So here is a newborn massive cardiomegaly, SpO2 is 60%. Can you guess the diagnosis? I think everybody can guess, because this kind of heart, most common diagnosis is neonatal Epstein. So this patient may present with the congestive heart failure even before birth. Then in this case, you see the neonate having the SpO2 68%, very, very sick baby. So you can make the heart size is not very much enlarged. The upper part of heart is not very narrow, is quite broad. And you can see the reticular pattern kind of interstitial pneumonia kind of picture. So somebody can label it RDS also, but we should always keep a differential diagnosis for such kind of picture as a obstructed TAPVC. Then what a pertinent question once a cyanotic CST is diagnosed. So should we look for a definitive diagnosis? Not needed. We must understand the underlying physiology. Prostaglandin, yes, if drug dependent lesion is suspected. Ventilation, yes, if it is required. Oxygen, we have to very judicious, and we should accept the appropriate saturation which is expected for that particular physiology. If sick baby is to be transferred, parents counseling should be done, and proper preparation like elective ventilation, infusion pump, fluid, inotrope, calcium, prostaglandin, and the one should talk to probable tertiary care center where baby has to be shifted. Then a sick cyanotic heart disease, they can be divided like this based on their saturation. So if saturation is less than 75%, we can think of and decrease pulmonary blood flow. Then we have to think about top pulmonary atresia. If it is cardiomegaly and increased pulmonary blood flow, we have to think about transposition physiology and Epstein anomaly as we saw in the X-ray. So in these cases, PG prostaglandin infusion can be started. These are the dependent pulmonary circulation. Other group is less than 75% saturation, but ground glass opacity as we have seen just before. So obstructed TAPVC. And these are also very sick patients, need emergency transport, but in this case, PG prostaglandin is not needed. Then SpO2 around 90%, there is a step down, more than 3% shock, weak femoral quark, aortic arch interruption, hypoplastic left heart syndrome are the differential diagnosis. Prostaglandin is indicated, and this is called as drug-dependent systemic circulation, and emergency transport to a tertiary care center is recommended. If SpO2 is 80 to 90%, no CHF, decreased pulmonary blood flow, it may be a classical TAF where beta blocker iron should be started. And same if the features of CHF and saturation is 80 to 95%, we have to look for the admixture lesion like TAPVC, truncus, and decongestive therapy, iron, and elective referral is recommended. So here are a few case scenarios. This is the case one, a 28 days old baby got suddenly decompensated, went into ventilation, management was done, there was high heart rate, and we know arrhythmias are one of cause for the decompensation. So in this case, because it was in this case we have to look for what? first we have to look for the X-ray. So in this X-ray, we can see the oligemic lung field. So this becomes like a TOF physiology with maybe duct dependent, because after such a 2 or 3 weeks, patient is decompensating. So there might be a region that maybe duct is closing. So in this particular case, and when we look at the ECG, you can see that northwest axis is there for the QRS, and the V1, you can see pure R wave, R-dash R pattern. So echo was TOF pulmonary atresia with closing PDA, CT angio showed same, patient was referred for complete repair, because in this case, it was a very short segment pulmonary atresia. So these cases can go for a single stage surgery also. So the pulmonary atresia TOF actually are 2 to 3% of whole CST. The low SPO, they present with low SPO2. The source of blood may be PDA or MAPCAS collateral. Management immediately, what we have done, you have seen the intervention could be BT shunt, the PDS stenting, somehow we have to restore the pulmonary blood flow, or we have to go for a definitive surgery. So the overall outcome for this kind of pulmonary atresia is very good. At 40 years of age, around a good life is in 85 to 90% of cases. Prostaglandin infusion, this is a protocol. So we know that a patient can come in a serious condition because of closure of PFO PDA, restriction of PFO, arrhythmia, and septicemia and anemia. So in this case too, this patient was 14-15 days on the ventilator and was brought to us. We actually managed on ventilator and extubated and then sent, and also made the diagnosis. So it is a cleft palate, cleft soft palate. There is a special faces, and you have this air trapping over here. So there is a to and fro, there was a to and fro murmur also. So it is very, very specific. Everybody can make a diagnosis of TOF absent pulmonary on clinical ground. And most of the time, these patients present for the respiratory issues, because these pulmonary arteries are so much dilated that they cause a lot of harm to bronchus. And there is bronchomalacia, so many times there may be obstruction, there might be emphysema. So operative surgery, usually people would like to wait, a surgeon would like to wait a year or so. So this is the TOF absent, and 3 to 6% of the TOF patient may have this. 25% these patient may have DiGeorge. This patient had DiGeorge, and remarkable finding is aneurysmal pulmonary artery and borderline desaturation is there. Then summary of classical TOF, usually 4.6% of all CSTs, characterized by large VST, severe PS, RVH, and the overriding of aorta. 5 to 10% may have incremental cyanosis and cyanotic spell by 2 months onward, needing palliation less than 4 months, or they are presenting little later than complete correction 5 months onward. The beta blocker are the first line of management agent, medical agent, and they can successfully prevent the cyanotic spell. Blood hemoglobin has to be maintained over 13, and 40% patient, if not intervene, will die because of complications, polycythemia, infection, hypoxia, RV failure, brain access. This is cyanotic spell is very, very important, and we have to know how to calm the baby. We have to sedate, beta blockers, IV fluid, soda bicarb. We should not push the oxygen on an irritable baby, rather we have to nebulize it, and after comforting the child, give blood transfusion, muscle relaxation, and the morphine, ketamine, propranolol, all these are the drugs which can be given to manage a child. So coming to case 3.5 kg weight baby, and SPO2 65%, had no murmur and was transferred to us on day 10. X-ray was this, and everybody can recognize what is happening over here. Because you said overexposed film, the blood flow is definitely increased, but unlike VST, where you have a prominent pulmonary artery, you are not having that. It's an egg on site appearance that is very classical for the TGA. So this is the echo picture, and What is the management plan for this baby? We have to give prostaglandin, transfer the baby for tertiary care center, ventilation, and balloon atrial septostomy if it is required. So why there is a essential need for PFO and PDA in TJ patients? So you can see here the normal patient, this desaturated blood has to go in the pulmonary artery and then lungs. But here the desaturated blood directly going into aorta, and the saturated blood is going into pulmonary artery. So what is happening? This venous blood is entering into aorta and coming back to body again in veins, systemic veins, and the pulmonary venous blood is entering into pulmonary artery and again into lungs. So the two systems are going parallel, they are not mixing anywhere. So we are looking for a mixing site, and these mixing sites are PFO and PD because they are valveless places. So according to pressure, the blood flow in both the directions. So we need that. So for a summary, 1 to 1.1% of all CSD may have DTGA. DTGA may be with VSD or without VSD. There might be PDA, and if it is if there is no VSD and PDA, then can be palliated with BAS, prostaglandin, and PDA stenting. Arterial switch operation is most important. Should be done within 3 weeks of birth. After 3 weeks, usually sending is done. And the good size ASD, if it is there, then saturation may remain fine. BAS is not needed. TGA, VSD, PDA surgery can be deferred up to 2 to 4 months. Decongestive therapy would be needed, and the sending procedure, the outcome is little poor. But for the arterial switch done on right time, there is 10% risk, but very, very good long life without any complication. Case 4, patient came to us on ventilator. You can see this PPHN like picture. First diagnosis was PPHN, and as we discussed, in all cases of where we are thinking about the pneumonia or maybe RDS, we should think of the obstructed TAPVC, and you can see this turbulent flow over here inside the liver shadow, and this is actually a obstructed TAPVC infradiaphragmatic. So the TAPVC is a condition where the pulmonary veins have to join left atrium at particular time, but they cannot in few of the cases, and then they have a vertical vein, and this vertical vein can drain into SVC, innominate vein, coronary sinus. So in various part of systemic venous system, and blood will come back to right atrium and then again will be distributed on left side through a PFO. And that is how it's an admixture lesion, because all the blood will meet at the right atrium, and a same saturation you will get in the pulmonary artery and aorta. So this is you can see a classical figure of it, but this cannot be seen in newborn period or neonatal period. And this is a supracardiac TAPVC. I have shown the infradiaphragmatic. This is again a supracardiac TAPVC. You can see this is the innominate vein, and this pulmonary veins are draining. All pulmonary veins are draining into innominate vein. So total pulmonary venous drainage is 1 to 2% of the CSD. Up to 50% may have some kind of obstruction. There is severe pulmonary arterial hypertension, but before that, pulmonary venous hypertension, severe metabolic acidosis, emergency surgery for the obstructed TAPVC. Rest can be treated in 3 to 6 months of age. HLHS, here HLHS was diagnosed in a doctor couple at 30 weeks of gestation. So what should we advise? We cannot discontinue this pregnancy. We have to reach up to maximum, whatever fetal gait, maximum weight gain can happen for the fetus. Then this patient came to us, and you can see that was the fetal diagnosis was right. This is a very small LV, and this is not contracting at all, and very small aortic valve. So this is a HLHS, and you can see the PVH. So like in obstructed TAPVC, you get pulmonary venous hypertension in HLHS also. This disease, most of the time people are not operating because the outcome is very poor in India. But abroad nowadays, people are continuing pregnancy and they are operating on this, and the mode of operation is Fontan surgery. Duct dependent for systemic blood flow. Here and there are many questions. When you are transporting a baby of HLHS, you should be very careful about the cannulas, prostaglandin, to optimize the prostaglandin infusion, optimize the oxygen inhalation. Should not be overdo oxygen inhalation. So these are few of the. This is a 2-week-old baby with choanal atresia, hypoplastic RV, and you can see in this particular case how small is the RV. And here we did a RVOT because there was a PS, so I did a balloon dilatation of pulmonary valve with the hope that over the period of time this RV will grow. So sometimes this kind of procedure can be done in these cases intrauterine. We are not doing it, but in many places now it's being started. So case 6 summary, a CHARGE syndrome, and it's a single gene disorder. And in this particular case, hypoplastic RV was there. We are expecting that this RV will grow because now there is no obstruction across the pulmonary valve. If it is not so, then this patient will go for a univentricular repair. The another T is truncus arteriosus, where you have separation of pulmonary artery and aorta is not happening. So 3 vessels, coronary artery, aorta, and pulmonary artery have similar origin. So these cases increase with the pulmonary, present with the increased pulmonary blood flow. In this case, 2 to 4 months, you have to operate, you have to separate these 2 outflows, and the truncus remains the aorta, and a separate passage has to be there for the pulmonary artery. So this is the, and you always get a borderline desaturation. I am quickly completing it. So this is a truncus arteriosus, another, and you have PA and aortic saturation same. Like tricuspid atresia, here you have a very small RV, no tricuspid valve. So all blood will go through ASD, LV, then come back to RV and then pulmonary artery. So this is a case because the obstruction is over here. So pansystolic murmur you can hear. So in a cyanotic baby, you are getting pansystolic murmur. Chances of having, and this kind of heart where you are having a prominent SVC and this box like a broad base apex, then you can think of the tricuspid atresia. In this case, Fontan surgery univentricular. This is another antenatal detection of the severe upstream, this dysplastic tricuspid valve. And this is the at birth. This is before birth. You are getting severe TR. In this case, you are getting a large heart and patient needed intubation immediately and within 2-3 weeks needed surgery. So to summarize, the cyanotic congenital heart disease need to be intervened on time with BAS, prostaglandin, duct stenting, total correction. Intervention mostly is multiple. Hemoglobin level must be more than 13 grams. In infective endocarditis, prophylaxis is recommended. Over a long-term outcome is good and normal mental and physical development is expected. Timing of intervention need to be customized. We discussed many of the cases what timing of intervention must be. All CCSD with increased pulmonary blood flow in general must be treated between 2 to 4 months. If it says univentricular repair, then PA bending must be done as a first step because the univentricular repair means you are going for 2, 3, 4 surgery. The CCSD with decreased pulmonary blood flow need to be intervened according to severity of symptom and cyanotic spell. Cyanotic spell should be controlled with the beta blocker and iron supplement. If it is not so, then we have to go for either shunt or definitive surgery. A choice between total anatomical correction by ventricle and physiological correction has to be made discreetly. So this is my last slide. See, the pediatrician's role is such a important in care of a cardiac person because they are lifelong, they are going to need a medical this thing. So I am giving a little tribute to all of you. A baby with a heart defect comes in your hand as helpless as little Alami. Like father, you set discipline. Like a mother, you let them spread their wings amidst procedures, nutrition, vaccine, sports, and schooling. You live with their sickness and despair to let them survive through pain and calamities and embrace their struggle with compassion. Your Journey with the baby is special, like a fairy without wings and magical van. Hats off. And that's why this topic is management itinerary for a pediatrician. It's a long, long journey. Thank you very much.